It's a quiet campus now, 40 acres of manicured lawns, dotted with centuries-old oaks draped in Spanish moss, and mostly empty buildings, but it wasn't always this serene. Until 1964, this was a military boarding school. Generations of boys as young as 6 years old came to live here, but the history of the school goes back even further, when the town of Washington, just outside of Natchez, served as the capital of the Mississippi Territory. The school was chartered in 1802 and named for the president at the time, Thomas Jefferson. The following year, Jefferson completed the Louisiana Purchase, and settlers flocked to the boundaries of the new territory.
We were the frontier. I mean, out here in the Natchez area, this was a long way from civilization. And the people who lived out here still wanted a way for their sons to be educated so that they could grow up to be, planters and, managers and doctors and lawyers.
Classes began at the college in 1811.
It was actually a college. You could get a degree here, but very few people actually did.
Only about a half dozen degrees were ever granted by Jefferson College, which closed during the Civil War. After the war, as a military school, the student population grew with its highest enrollment at about 130. But in its new role, it was not supported by the state.
Well, this was a private school, and it took money to run, and the legislature wasn't giving it any type of money, and they just ran out. And when they did close, they just kind of shut the doors and left one day and never came back. And as a result, in between 1964 and 1972, the place was virtually abandoned.
But Jefferson College would make a comeback, thanks in part to Hollywood. In the 1980s, the TV miniseries North and South, starring Patrick Swayze, was filmed in Natchez, and then more productions followed.
The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. In the early 90s, it had Elijah Wood when he was about that big. And that was also filmed back behind some of our buildings. They kind of set it up to look like a Main Street area and the jail where Jim was captured.
I gotta tell him you're not a murderer.
Now that the campus has been restored, about 14,000 tourists a year come to see part of Mississippi's original history. When you come to see it, you'll notice a prominent marker on a hill, a monument where a small Methodist church once stood. In that church, on the campus of Jefferson College, the first Mississippi Constitution was drafted in 1817, making this the very spot where the state of Mississippi was born. A fitting place for our southbound journey across the great state of Mississippi to come to an end.